What would you do if you were worth hundreds of millions to an entire industry, and that very same industry seemed determined to tear you apart? What if the people who stood to gain the most from your success were the same ones quietly working to undermine it? That's not a hypothetical. That's the real, documented, and deeply unsettling story of Caitlin Clark and the WNBA. Over the past 2 years, this woman has been targeted on the court with hits that crossed the line from tough defense into something far more personal. She's been snubbed from the biggest international stage in sports. Rumors have swirled about her own teammates freezing her out, and an injury-ravaged season nearly derailed everything she'd built. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody predicted. Because every single attempt to humble, contain, or sideline Caitlin Clark hasn't just failed, it's backfired in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. And the league that once seemed hell-bent on keeping her in her place, it's now financially restructuring itself around her. This is the full story, from the brutal welcome she received as a rookie to the devastating injuries that stole her sophomore season. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. To the revenge tour that silenced every last critic. And trust me, what happened just 2 weeks ago will leave you speechless. Let's start at the beginning. When the Indiana Fever selected Caitlin Clark with the #1 overall pick in the 2024 draft, it wasn't just a basketball moment. It was a cultural earthquake. This wasn't your typical promising rookie stepping into the pros. She held the all-time NCAA scoring record across both genders, with 3,951 points. Her college games were pulling in viewership numbers that made Major League playoff games look like local access television. The 2024 championship game drew nearly 19 million viewers. The draft itself pulled 2.4 million. Those are numbers the WNBA had never seen and, frankly, never imagined possible. And the impact was instantaneous. Arenas that had been half empty for years were suddenly selling out in minutes. Ticket prices on the secondary market exploded to levels no one had ever seen in women's basketball. The league finally moved to charter flights for all teams, something veteran players had been demanding for over a decade. But it wasn't veteran advocacy that made it happen. It was the gravitational pull of one 2-year-old from Iowa. Then came the endorsement money. Clark signed a $28 million contract with Nike over 8 years, and that deal included her own signature shoe, the largest sponsorship deal for a women's basketball player in history. She had partnerships with Gatorade, State Farm, Wilson, Gainbridge, and a growing list of brands fighting for her face. According to Sportico, her 2025 endorsement income reached $16.1 million, while her WNBA salary represented roughly 0.5% of her total earnings. Let that sink in. Her endorsements were making her over 200 times what the league was paying her. She was already the most valuable athlete in the history of women's professional sports, and she hadn't even finished her rookie season yet. The stage was perfectly set for a coronation, a new era, a rising tide that would lift every single boat in the WNBA. But what she got instead was something far uglier than anyone anticipated. From her very first game in the WNBA, it became painfully clear that Caitlin Clark wasn't going to receive any kind of warm welcome. The physicality she faced wasn't just intense, it was relentless, targeted, and deeply personal. Defenders weren't simply playing hard. They were delivering messages with every shove, every bump, every off-ball screen that landed a little too hard. Veteran players who had been in the league for years seemed to take a special kind of pleasure in making this rookie's life miserable. And look, nobody expected the transition to be easy. Every rookie faces a learning curve, but this was on another level entirely. The amount of contact she was absorbing game after game was unlike anything the league had seen directed at a single player. It felt less like a professional initiation and more like a coordinated campaign to send a message: you don't belong here. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But the moment that truly ripped the mask off, everything happened in a game against the Chicago Sky. Chennedy Carter didn't just commit a hard foul. She delivered a vicious blindside shoulder check, far away from the ball, the kind of play that had absolutely nothing to do with basketball. Clark went crashing to the floor, while Carter walked away without so much as a backward glance. The play went viral instantly. Millions of people watched it, rewound it, and watched it again in disbelief. Carter's smug refusal to address the incident in the postgame was bad enough. But what made it worse, what really poured fuel on the fire, was Angel Reese's visible, gleeful celebration on the sideline, as if the hit was some kind of victory. The WNBA's initial response? A common foul. That's it. It took an absolute avalanche of public outrage before the league reluctantly upgraded it to a flagrant foul after the fact. And in that sluggish, half-hearted response, fans saw the truth with chilling clarity. The league was not going to protect its biggest star. She was on her own. And while the world was still debating that one play, whispers of something even more disturbing began to surface from the last place anyone wanted to look inside her own locker room. As the 2024 season rolled on, something about the Indiana Fever's offense looked fundamentally broken. Not just bad chemistry, not just a new team finding its rhythm, something deeper. On play after play, Caitlin Clark, arguably the greatest shooter on the planet, would be wide open on the perimeter, hands up, calling for the ball, and she'd be completely ignored. The tape didn't lie. Passes were being forced into double-covered players in the paint, while Clark stood alone beyond the arc, a guaranteed bucket waiting to happen. Fans started compiling clips. Analysts started breaking down possessions. And the internet did what the internet does. It built a conspiracy theory. But this one had teeth. The speculation was explosive. Her own teammates were intentionally freezing her out, deliberately limiting her touches to keep her numbers down and send their own message. Now, was jealousy a factor? Rumors suggest it played a role. The unprecedented media attention, the massive Nike deal, the fact that the entire franchise's identity had been rewritten around a rookie that's a lot for veteran players to swallow. Aaliyah Boston's clipped, evasive post-game comments didn't exactly calm things down. When reporters pressed her about the obvious lack of chemistry, her answers dripped with corporate restraint, hinting at frustrations she wasn't willing to voice publicly. It's important to say, none of this was ever confirmed. We don't know what was said behind closed doors. But the perception was devastating. The narrative shifted from a rookie learning the ropes to a generational talent being sabotaged by the very people who were supposed to have her back. And that perception was about to collide with something far bigger than locker room politics. The animosity Clark faced wasn't limited to opposing players or potential locker room friction. It was amplified through the media by some of the most respected voices in the sport. Before Clark was even drafted, WNBA legend Diana Taurasi made a comment that still echoes today. She predicted, coldly, that reality was coming for Caitlin Clark. At the time, some dismissed it as harmless analysis. But in hindsight, it felt like something heavier, a warning, maybe even a threat dressed up as expert commentary. Other veterans, both current and retired, fell into a similar pattern. They justified the brutal physicality as standard operating procedure for any rookie, conveniently ignoring the glaringly obvious fact that no rookie in the history of professional sports had ever entered a league with this massive A-target on their back. The conversation inevitably grew more complicated, touching on dynamics that many people were uncomfortable discussing openly. Here was a white player becoming the most celebrated face of a predominantly black league. Many rightly pointed out that the media's relentless savior narrative inadvertently erased the incredible legacies of the black women who had toiled in relative obscurity for years to build the WNBA from the ground up. And that's a legitimate and important point. But some weaponized that tension to justify treatment that went far beyond fair competition. It became an ideological battle, the old guard, who felt their contributions were being callously overlooked, versus the new phenomenon, who represented a seismic shift in the sport's cultural and financial landscape. And this friction was about to produce the most stunning decision the sport had seen in years. If there was one moment that crystallized everything, the resentment, the gatekeeping, the bizarre self-sabotage, it was the decision to leave Caitlin Clark off the Team USA roster for the 2024 Paris Olympics. Let that settle for a moment. The single most popular, most watched, most talked about basketball player on the entire planet was told she wasn't good enough to represent her country, not even as a reserve. The committee's justifications were paper thin. They cited her lack of senior national team experience and some vague notion of team chemistry. Reports indicated that several players who made the roster were having statistically inferior seasons. Everyone with any understanding of basketball or basic common sense knew the real reason. This was the ultimate act of gatekeeping, a formal message from the establishment that screamed, "We don't care about your fame, your fan base, or the mountains of revenue you generate. This is our club. You're not invited." And what did the Indiana Fever do in response? What bold, passionate defense did they mount for their franchise player who had just been publicly humiliated on a global stage? Nothing. A deafening, soul-crushing silence. The front office issued the most measured, sterile, corporate-approved statements imaginable. Something about the long term. Something about the bright future. Not a shred of fire, outrage, or genuine advocacy. They chose to play the political game. They chose to avoid rocking the boat with the league's powerful establishment, rather than standing up for the person who was single-handedly funding their franchise's revival. They were happy to sell her jerseys by the truckload and pack their arena to the rafters. But when it came time to fight for her, they flinched. And that cold-blooded calculation revealed a painful truth. In their eyes, she was a commodity, an asset to be managed, not a player to be championed. But here's where the story shifts in a direction the competitor's version never tells you. Because what happened next wasn't a triumphant revenge tour, at least not right away. It was something far more painful. Clark never missed a game during 4 years at the University of Iowa, or during her rookie WNBA season in 2024. So what unfolded in 2025 was completely uncharted territory. The second season was supposed to be her answer to every critic, every doubter, every person who said she couldn't hang. Instead, it became a nightmare. The Fever opened the season 2-2, and Clark injured her left quad against the New York Liberty on May 24. On May 26, it was announced she'd missed time due to the injury, and she wound up sitting out 5 games. When she came back, she looked like herself again. Clark returned on June 14 and scored 32 points while dishing out 9 assists and grabbing 8 rebounds in a win against the Liberty. 32 points, 9 assists, 8 boards. A statement game that seemed to announce, "I'm back and I'm better." But the relief was short-lived. After playing in 5 straight games, Clark suffered an injury to her left groin and on June 26 was ruled out again. She came back on July 9. 6 days later, on July 15, she went down again. A right groin injury during the Fever's 87-77 win over the Connecticut Sunday. And then, while rehabbing, the hits just kept coming. Clark suffered a bone bruise on her left ankle during a workout and was rehabbing the ankle concurrently with the right groin injury that had sidelined her. She only played 13 times due to a left quad strain that kept her out for 3 weeks, a left groin injury that sidelined her for 2 weeks, and now a right groin injury, 13 games out of a full season. For someone who had never missed a single game in her life, college or pro, this was devastating, on a level most people couldn't fully grasp. The 2024 Rookie of the Year and a first-team All-WNBA selection, Clark averaged 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, 5 rebounds, and 1.6 steals in those 13 games. Even limited and clearly not fully healthy, the numbers were still elite. 5 double-doubles and a triple-double in just 13 appearances. But on September 4, the announcement came that everyone had been dreading. Clark wrote, I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day, with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. The numbers told the rest of the story, in brutal fashion. The Fever were 8-5, with Clark in the lineup, and 13-15 without her. A playoff-caliber team with her. A below a 500 squad without. If anyone still doubted her value, the data erased all ambiguity. And for the WNBA itself, losing its biggest draw for the majority of the season was a financial gut punch. Ratings dipped, buzz faded. The league was reminded, painfully, of just how much one person meant to the entire enterprise. The woman they'd spent a year trying to humble was now being missed more than anyone could have predicted. But she wasn't done. Not even close. And what happened next would make every single person who doubted her choke on their words. After 8 months away from competitive basketball, 8 months of rehab, frustration, uncertainty, and silence, Caitlin Clark stepped back onto the court in March 2026 at the FIBA Women's World Cup Qualifying Tournament in San Juan, Puerto Rico. When Caitlin Clark took the floor against Senegal in Team USA's opener, it was not only her senior national team debut, but her first competitive game in 239 days. 239 days. Let that number sink in. Most players coming back from that kind of absence ease into things. They manage minutes. They shake off rust. Clark apparently didn't get that memo. She went off for 17 points and 12 assists in 19 minutes against Senegal and recorded the second most assists ever in a FIBA Women's World Cup qualifying game. 17 points, 12 assists in 19 minutes on her senior Team USA debut. After 239 days of not playing competitive basketball, if you wrote that in a movie script, the studio would send it back and tell you it was too unrealistic. And she didn't slow down. Against New Zealand, Clark scored 14 points and added 6 assists as the USA defeated New Zealand 101-46. Against Spain, in the tournament finale, Clark led the team with 7 assists in an 84-70 victory. Clark was named the MVP of the tournament after helping lead the Americans to a 5-0 record, defeating Italy, Spain, host Puerto Rico, Senegal, and New Zealand. For the tournament, Clark averaged 11.6 points and 6.4 assists on 52.9% shooting from the field, including 40% from three-point range. Fittingly, she led both Team USA and the tournament in assists. Remember what happened at the Paris Olympics? Remember the committee that said she lacked senior national team experience? That she wasn't ready? That the chemistry wouldn't work? She answered every single one of those excuses in 5 games. And here's the part that really ties this whole saga together in a poetic bow. Angel Reese and Paige Buchers also had impressive debuts alongside Clark on that Team USA roster. The same Angel Reese who celebrated the Kennedy Carter hit. The same rivalry that had been weaponized and amplified for clicks and controversy. There they were, wearing the same jersey, playing for the same flag. The narrative was evolving right before everyone's eyes. And all signs point to Clark being on the plane to Berlin in September, and she looks ready to reclaim her place as one of the top guards in the WNBA. The woman the Olympic Committee said wasn't good enough now wears the USA jersey and dominates from the moment she laces up. The FIBA World Cup in Berlin this September and the road to the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics lie directly ahead. But even that wasn't the biggest twist in this story. Because while Clark was proving herself on the international stage, the entire financial structure of the WNBA was being rewritten behind the scenes. On the 20th of March 2026, the WNBA and the Women's National Basketball Players Association announced they had reached a tentative agreement on a new collective bargaining agreement. The new 7-year CBA which will commence with the 2026 season and run through 2032, represents one of the most transformational labor agreements ever reached in major professional sports. And the numbers? The numbers are staggering. The league's overall salary cap will rise to $7 million in 2026, up from $1.5 million in 2025. Player salaries will average $583,000 beginning in 2026, a rise from $120,000 last year. Read that again. The average salary jumped from $120,000 to $583,000 in a single offseason. The league's top players will gain the ability to sign the first multi-million-dollar contracts in WNBA history. Maximum contract players will earn a salary of $1.4 million in 2026. That is expected to grow to more than $2.4 million by 2032. And for Caitlin Clark specifically, the union made it a priority to get better pay for players like Clark, whose existing rookie deals will be adjusted to the new CBA parameters. For Clark, the #1 pick in 2024, entering the third year of her rookie deal, that should be nearly $530,000. That's up from $78,000 the previous year, a nearly seven-fold increase. But it doesn't stop there. Thanks to a new CBA feature called Epic, exceptional performance on initial contract, players can renegotiate the fourth year of their rookie deal and agree to a 3-year contract extension. Honors such as being named to the All-WNBA first or second team could get them a max deal, or winning MVP a supermax deal. Clark was limited to 13 games last year due to injuries, but she was All-WNBA as a rookie in 2024, and thus will be eligible for a max deal in 2027, from $78,000 to potentially $1.4 million in just 3 years. That's not incremental growth, that's a financial revolution. The 2026 CBA establishes the first comprehensive revenue-sharing model in women's professional sports history. This groundbreaking model provides unlimited upside for players as league and team revenues continue to grow. The new system will result in significant increases in player compensation, with the league projecting more than $1 billion in player salaries and benefits over the 7-year agreement. For the first time ever, players will receive 20% of the league's gross revenue. That distinction matters. It ties earnings directly to the league's growth rather than profits after expenses, giving players a more meaningful stake as the WNBA expands commercially. And the expansion? 2 new expansion franchises, the Portland Fire and Toronto Tempo, will join the league this year, bringing the total number of teams to 15. The media rights deal that was once worth roughly $60 million, the new deal is valued at about $2.2 billion or $200 million per year. That's not the vague projection the competitor's video mentioned. That's the real number, a more than 3-fold increase. Beginning with the 2026 season and running through the 2036 season, Disney will distribute WNBA games on ABC, ESPN, or ESPN2. NBCU will distribute its games on NBC USA Network and/or Peacock. And Amazon will stream its games globally on Prime Video. The WNBA has gone from fighting for scraps of airtime to having 3 of the biggest media companies on the planet battling for its content. And none of this happens without the explosion of interest that one player ignited. Now, let's zoom out and really look at the full picture. Because when you lay it all out, the irony is almost too perfect to be real. Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA making $76,000 a year while generating tens of millions of dollars in new revenue for the entire league. Teams that used to play in front of sparse crowds in small college gyms started selling out 20,000-seat NBA arenas, not because their own players suddenly became must-see television, but because Caitlin Clark was on the opposing roster. She was the golden goose in the most literal sense imaginable. And how did the league respond to this unprecedented gift? By letting defenders target her without consequence. By allowing the Olympic Committee to to embarrass her on the world stage. By having her own organization choose political silence over passionate advocacy, by having veteran voices in the media normalize treatment that would have been called scandalous if directed at any other athlete of her stature. They tried to humble her. They tried to gatekeep her. They tried to make her pay dues that no one had ever been asked to pay before. And then her body betrayed her too. 3 separate injuries in one season, 13 games out of 41, months of rehab, an ankle injury while rehabbing a groin injury. The kind of setback that breaks careers, not just seasons. And through all of it, every hit, every snub, every silent betrayal, every agonizing day on the sideline, she not only survived, she came back stronger. She walked into Puerto Rico after 239 days away and immediately dropped a double-double on a senior national team debut. She won tournament MVP. She shot 53% from the field and 40% from 3. She led the entire tournament in assists. She played alongside Angel Reese and Paige Buchers under the same flag, proving that the narrative of division can be rewritten. And she's walking into the 2026 WNBA season with a $530,000 salary, a path to a max contract, a spot on the World Cup roster for Berlin in September, and a league that has fundamentally restructured its economics in ways that benefit every single player who follows in her footsteps. WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert called the CBA a defining moment in the WNBA's 30-year history and all of women's professional sports. And you know who else weighed in? Diana Taurasi. The same Diana Taurasi who said reality is coming for Caitlin Clark before she was even drafted. Taurasi told The Spun, the WNBA has gone through a long journey over the last 30 years. There's a lot of hard work, grit, perseverance, and determination. This is just another milestone for women's sports. It's nice to see the WNBA in a better place than where you left it. The tone has shifted. The reality did come for Caitlin Clark, but it wasn't the humbling defeat Taurasi predicted. It was something else entirely. The reality is that Clark survived everything this league threw at her and emerged on the other side as the most important figure in the history of women's professional basketball. So where does this leave us? The WNBA is standing at the most critical crossroads in its 30-year existence. One path leads to unprecedented growth, billion-dollar media deals, expansion into new markets, salaries that finally reflect the incredible talent on the court, global recognition that turns the WNBA from a niche product into a mainstream powerhouse. And that path runs directly through Caitlin Clark. The other path? The one driven by pride, ego, tradition, and insular gatekeeping? That path risks squandering the greatest gift this sport has ever been given. It risks alienating the millions of new fans who showed up specifically because of the energy and excitement one player brought to the game. Here's the question that remains, and it's one that should keep every decision-maker in the WNBA up at night. Is the establishment so rooted in its own traditions that it's willing to keep fighting the very force that's funding its future? Or has the fire they put Caitlin Clark through every cheap shot, every political snub, every deafening silence from the people who should have had her back accidentally forged something they can no longer contain? Something so resilient, so undeniable, and so deeply connected to millions of fans around the world that trying to stop it would be like trying to hold back the ocean with your bare hands. The 2026 WNBA season kicks off May 8. The FIBA World Cup in Berlin begins in September. The road to the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics stretches out ahead. She looks ready to reclaim her place as one of the top guards in the WNBA. That's great news for the league and the Indiana Fever. Every single chapter of this story, the arrival, the gauntlet, the snub, the injuries, the comeback, has been building toward whatever comes next. And if the last 2 years have taught us anything, it's this. Every time someone tells Caitlin Clark she can't, she responds by doing something that rewrites the record books. The WNBA tried to break its golden goose. It didn't just fail. It created something far more dangerous. A player with nothing left to prove and absolutely everything left to win.